Hey, welcome out to the Explore and More show. It's the Ted Blank Luxury Travel and Adventures owner with me, as always, Mr. Ted Blank. How are
Good
you?
to be here. I'm doing really well.
Good. Well, welcome back. I know we talked a little bit off camera, but welcome back.
I was busy doing some show prep, so I was traveling for a couple of weeks. So we call that show prep, right?
I love when show prep is, I'm on a cruise for
Exactly.
like 12 days.
12 days, yeah. We took a cruise to New England and Canada, which is a really, really popular place for folks to go in the fall.
Yeah.
Because, of course, the colors are either starting to come out or they're out. And there's just so much interesting history, both on the U.S. side, but also the Canadian side. And it was funny because, I remember that there was this war called the War of 1812.
Oh, yeah.
The Canadians were on the other side. And so they built a lot of fortresses to protect themselves against us. And I'm like, oh, that's kind of interesting to see that. So it was a really interesting trip, and we visited the city of Quebec in Canada, which is just a beautiful city. Really interesting blend of the French culture with North America.
Nice.
And so it's a definite cruise to put on your bucket list, a New England and Canada cruise.
Fun. That's one. It's interesting. That's the travel rookie. There's all these cruises that I'm like, I never would have thought of that. But that sounds kind of fun. Now that we kind of dive into it a little bit, well, that sounds kind of interesting. Because I'm not really a big city person. I don't like to go plop down in a big city and I don't know. I lived in Chicago for long enough. I've been in Minneapolis a ton and New York once or twice. But it'd be fun to leave the harbor in New York, Statue of Liberty.
Which we did, and yes, the Statue of Liberty was right there. And we actually happened to be there on a date when there was a harvest moon.
Oh.
And so they have the highest tides you can imagine. And so the ship I was on is called the Queen Mary 2.
Okay.
And the Queen Mary 2, on a good day, it has to squeeze to get under the Verrazano Narrows Bridge. It kind of has to take a deep breath and hold it. So on the day we went underneath it, 16 feet between the top of the smokestack and the Verrazano Narrows Bridge. So I'm sure they did their math very carefully, but
wow.
It's pretty impressive to see. But you sail right by the Statue of Liberty, which is, obviously a Kodak moment, but a really neat experience. And this particular ship, it's kind of a successor to the transatlantic ocean liners. And back in the day, many of our relatives would have, their first glimpse of the United States would have been when they came in underneath the bridge and saw the Statue of Liberty and stuff. So and the bridge wasn't there, but the statue
Ellis Island right there as
Ellis
well,
Island's right there in Lower Town, Manhattan, Brooklyn.
Yeah. And do you leave? I just think at night would be epic, but I bet daytime would be great.
We left
too.
about 5 o'clock.
Okay.
So it was still light, and so you could see the Statue of Liberty. Yeah, but I'm sure the Manhattan skyline would have been breathtaking in the dark as well.
Yeah. That's awesome. So give me an idea. What are we talking about today?
Well, I thought that was actually kind of a good segue into a topic. And, we talk about cruises a lot. And when I talk to clients or folks who just, I meet at the grocery store and they find out what I do, and of course we have a conversation about travel.
Yeah.
There are a lot of misconceptions about cruising. And I think one of the misconceptions is that those cruise ships you see in the Caribbean, the big ones with the water slides and the family amusement parks and things like that, that's what cruising is. And that represents a portion of cruising. But there's another whole world out there with cruises like the one to New England and Canada.
Yeah.
And believe it or not, we actually have some technical terms we use in the travel industry for those different types of cruises.
Okay.
And so we call the cruises in the Caribbean, maybe the Mexican Riviera, the places you're going to enjoy the weather, you're going to enjoy the ship, you're maybe a little less picky about which ports you go to. We call that resort cruising, because really you have kind of a floating resort that's taking you from place to place. A lot of those cruises involve a private island, and we can talk a little bit about that. And then the flip side to that is the rest of the world of cruising. So cruises to Alaska, cruises to New England and Canada, cruises to the Mediterranean, the Baltic Sea, Southeast Asia, Australia. We would call that destination cruising. And that's where the destination is kind of the primary focus. And the cruise ship is kind of your vehicle to get you from place to place.
Sure.
And it's a great, convenient, relaxing way to do it. But the focus is a little more heavily on the destination than the ship itself. And so we call that destination cruising.
Interesting. How would you, so let's say I come to Ted Blank Travel, and I'm like, I've gone to this resort in Cancun, which is a real thing, for a long time.
Yep.
What is the advantage to going on to a resort cruise? Am I saying that right?
Yeah. I think why would you consider going on a resort cruise instead of going to a resort? Then I think, a lot of people just want to try different things, right?
100%.
They've went to a resort,
100%.
they liked it, but most people go to a different resort every year if they're doing that kind of warm weather getaway.
For sure.
And so, this is a great way to throw another resort into the mix. It's a great way to get a flavor for all the different islands in the Caribbean. You might say, hey, I really liked Jamaica when I was there, and I'd like to go back and spend more time there.
Great idea.
And, sometimes, too, cost can be a concern. And oftentimes cruising can offer a very competitive value, when you compare it to a resort. And then also what the experience is like.
Yeah.
And so I think one of the big differences between going on a cruise and going to a resort is that at a resort, there's not much to do beyond lying by the pool, lying by the beach, having a drink, having dinner, go to bed. You can take a few little trips outside, but you tend to pretty much not leave
There's a routine.
the resort.
Yep. Oh, yeah.
But on a cruise ship, there's so much more.
Yeah.
Every night there's a show, a production show. There are activities throughout the day. And maybe you want to spend the morning lying by the pool and enjoying the sun. In the afternoon, you want to go play bingo or go to the casino.
Yeah.
There's a lot to do on a cruise ship that makes it different than a resort vacation. And so a lot of people, they maybe one year will do that trip to Cancun, and the next year they'll do a cruise or vice versa.
I like that.
And the other thing that I think is neat about cruising, especially in the Caribbean, that resort cruising, is the opportunity to go to what's called a private island. And so a private island is an island typically in the Bahamas, but it can be elsewhere, that the cruise line has essentially purchased. And they've developed their own, it's crazy. They've developed their own infrastructure on that port. Wow. And so some of them are kind of meant to be like the desert island. So, you get there, you get off, you have a beach, you have a nice beach to relax in, good food, have a drink, enjoy that day on the beach. Others, some of them have like amusement parks on them almost. So it's really an incredible diversity of what you can do on that day at the private island. And it's exclusive to the passengers on the cruise ship.
Okay.
So unlike, being in a big resort destination with a lot of hotels next to each other, it's just your ship that day. And so it's a really neat experience, and a lot of people really like that, and that can often be the highlight of a resort cruise in the Caribbean.
That's awesome. That's awesome. What you said that really resonated with me immediately was, on a cruise, you can see multiple islands.
Yeah, absolutely.
That really sounds great.
Absolutely.
I don't, do you go visit Jamaica for a week and go visit Cancun, go to Dominican or wherever?
You really
Costa Rica?
can't do it, right? I mean, you'd have to fly back home to fly between those two islands. So it gives you a nice overview.
Really interesting.
And some people are like, I really loved Jamaica, or I really loved the Turks and Caicos, and I want to go back and spend more time there. Other people are like, wow, I really love that cruise, and next time we're going to go on a different cruise.
Yeah, that's awesome.
There are also, just like resorts, there are big resorts and small resorts and boutique hotels and 5-star and 3-star and everything. With cruises, in these resort cruises, it's the same thing. And there are actually cruises that are essentially on a big oversized yacht for maybe 115 people. And they're going to go to those little tiny islands that the big ships can't go to. Or there are the big ships that have the water parks and things like that. So there's a huge diversity of options available for resort cruising beyond just the ones that you tend to see on TV. And so if you want to get away from the cold in the winter, like we do in up here in the Midwest, or if you just want to get away for a nice family or couples getaway, there are a lot of great options in that resort cruising space.
I love it. There was and I think this falls in the resort kind of smaller cruise ships. It was maybe a Windjammer. Am I remembering that right?
Yep. There are full-blown sailboats. There are, like I said, luxury yachts. There are almost floating culinary experiences. I mean, there is everything available.
Amazing. Yeah. Awesome. So let's shift gears a little bit and talk more about the destination cruising. What is that?
Yeah, so destination cruising is cruising where the focus is, of course, on the destination.
Sure.
So places that spring to mind would be, of course, Alaska. That's probably the #1 destination cruising destination. Europe, the Mediterranean, the Baltic, the British Isles, the Canary Islands, the Greek islands, lots of places. And you're going there, they might have great weather, but you're going to the Greek islands not just to sit on the beach. You're going there because you want to see the ruins and see some of the history and maybe have a little ouzo and have a gyro and get some cultural experiences. And so Europe is another big place for destination cruising, but Australia, the South Pacific,
Yeah.
French Polynesia, any place there's water, really anywhere there's an ocean, there is destination cruising. And sometimes it'll surprise people to hear that you can actually cruise to certain places. Greenland, for example.
Wow, really?
Iceland, even Hudson
Really?
Bay in northern Canada if you wanted to.
So I've got a surprise one that I heard about through Shan that you went to, I think last year. Was it Vietnam?
Yeah, so that was actually a river cruise.
That was
It'd be
a
a little
river
different.
cruise,
But yeah,
okay.
but actually Vietnam is a place that's, it's got a very long coastline if
Right.
you look at a map. And so a lot of the destination cruises in Southeast Asia, you might go from Hong Kong to Singapore
Right.
and stop at several places in Vietnam and Thailand and Cambodia. And so yeah, almost any place there's an ocean, there's the opportunity to do
awesome.
destination cruising. And I think the number one attraction for people is that you can see a lot of places.
Right.
You don't have to pack and unpack.
Yes.
And that's huge. And if you look at a cruise itinerary and you tried to recreate that without going on a ship,
Right.
you could spend a lot of time in airports or a lot of time on buses getting from place to place. So it's really an efficient
Right.
way to see things, very civilized way to see things. And again, you've got everything from the bigger cruise ships. You don't tend to see the mega ships
Sure.
like you see in the Caribbean, but the big cruise ships are there, small cruise ships, and sort of everything in between. And that's great because, some people might not really be comfortable spending a week or two on land in Vietnam. But
sure.
in a place like Vietnam, but you can really get a nice overview of it by taking a cruise, and you're back in a place that's essentially a Western style floating hotel.
Right. Yeah, you've used that line before, but it just, every time you say it, it resonates with me. You don't have to, you unpack one time.
Yep.
And until, for me, as the travel rookie, until I heard that line before we went on our cruise, and I was like, oh yeah, it didn't really, until you go and you unpack and you go, wow, that was really easy.
But every day you see something different.
Yes.
That's, I think, really where the magic of destination cruising is. And, these are some incredible ships with incredible experiences on board. But, when you wake up in the morning and you're in Athens, and then the next morning and you wake up and you're in Ephesus, and you can go see the ruins of ancient Ephesus, and all you had to do was sleep.
Right.
It really does change your perspective on travel. And I think that's why cruising has really, really grown in recent years, is because a lot of cruise lines have focused on delivering a much more destination intensive
Interesting. Okay.
experience. Better quality shore excursions, a lot of opportunities to get a more in-depth experience while you're there. Some cruise lines will have extended time in port, overnight calls. We actually spent the night in Quebec City. And so you have
Really?
2 full days to explore, and you can really see a lot. And if you were to take a land tour there, you'd probably spend 2 days there as
Right,
well. So
right.
it's kind of about the equivalent length of time. They bring the destination on board through culinary experiences, through onboard lectures, ways you can kind of learn about it. So it really is a very immersive way of traveling, even though your ship leaves port almost every night and goes off to go to the next place.
Amazing. Amazing. Yeah, Quebec seems like, and did you guys do anything overnight? Did you stay out late? Did you catch any
No,
shows?
I'm too old to go out too late. And there's always a show on the ship.
That's
So actually, that was a
really
great example. Is that
awesome.
they brought on board apparently they were a Grammy-winning Quebec band.
Okay.
And they had they actually sounded like a Scottish folk band.
Come on.
Just in French. Very similar Irish rhythm
Yeah.
to things. And so then they also talked about what they were performing and what the songs meant and how they related to the history of Quebec. And so it was a really interesting
That's great.
addition. And it was also a Sunday night, so there wasn't too much that was probably open that night. So yeah.
How fun.
The crew goes out late at night, but the passengers are in bed. So
Get ready for the next day.
Ready for the next day.
Next adventure.
yeah.
Any excursions on your last trip, or any that you want to highlight?
Well, that's I think a really critical part of the destination cruising experience. And that's something that we do at my agency is we'll sit down with our clients when they book a cruise and we'll help them select the right excursions for them. And so there are some cruise lines that include your choice of shore excursions in each port, but you can't do everything.
Right.
And so we want to help find the right thing to do. And a great example is Sicily in Italy. You can do a tour where you go see the volcano, Mount Etna. You can see some of the old Roman ruins, or you can do the Godfather tour and see where all the murders in The Godfather
Can't do them all,
happen.
though,
You
can
can't do
I?
them all. And so we help people pick and choose the ones that are the best for them, whether they're included or whether they're an additional add-on. And we can also arrange private excursions. And for a lot of people, they don't like to do the group excursions. They would rather do something privately, and we can help customize those things, and if you're in Rome, we can arrange privileged access to the Vatican Museum and things like that that really can make that excursion a real critical part of the experience, and we can make that a really special experience for you.
Wow. That's one of the things that I just love is how you can take an experience up a notch. Because when I looked at, just as a rookie, looked at some cruise things and packages, and you get into their excursions, and it's click, 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 click. You can click till you're blue in the face.
You can.
There's so much, and to have an expert like you and your team that you can rely on and reach out to and say, hey, here's my personality, here's my partner's personality. What should we do?
What should we do? We'd like to see this, but we don't really know anything about this destination. Or, maybe we'd really like to spend a little bit of time someplace before the cruise. Yeah. And Miami or Orlando, where you might embark on a cruise, not quite as interesting. But, Europe, spend a couple days in London. Yeah. We can put together a really special experience for you before that cruise or after that cruise. Tie it together seamlessly and make the whole thing into one vacation. Awesome. And I think that's a really neat way to experience a destination in a couple different ways.
That's awesome. So how do we get a hold of, or how do rookies, our experienced folks, what's the best way to reach out to you and your team?
Yeah, so the best way is to visit our website. It's tedblanktravel.com. You can also call our office at 651-964-8245, and we'll probably pop that link in the description below, and so you can reach out, and we're happy to set up a time to chat with folks on Zoom and figure out what the right destination or resort cruise for them is.
Awesome. Yeah, I'm ready for a resort cruise January or February this year. I got to figure it out.
All right. Well, make an appointment.
I will make an appointment with you, my friend. Thanks for joining us on the Explore and More show. This is Ted Blank with Ted Blank Luxury Travel and Adventure, and I'm Ken Conan, the rookie. We'll see you next week.